Welcome participants to ADPC's very first regional training course on financing for climate and disaster resilience. We are thrilled to have each and every one of you joining us for the online phase and hopefully to meet you for the in-person phase of this training. This regional training course is designed to be delivered virtually and in person over a 5-day training block. It offers a comprehensive curriculum covering basic concepts, instruments, and strategies to access finance for climate and disaster resilience. This course is designed for development practitioners related to climate change, disaster risk reduction, including planning, policy, and finance professionals from both the public and private sectors. This regional training course has two key objectives. First, to understand potential avenues to access finance from public, private, and international mechanisms. And second, to provide participants with the knowledge and skills needed to effectively support disaster risk reduction and climate resilience initiatives. This course has been thoughtfully designed to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and insights needed to excel in resource mobilization for climate action and disaster resilience. This course is also designed to bring in perspectives from experts within ADPC and from different agencies located here in Bangkok, implementing in Asia Pacific, that brings in a wealth of real-world experience to the online and in-person phases of this training. They are here to guide you, answer your questions, and ensure you get the most out of this learning experience. By the end of this course, participants will be equipped with the necessary knowledge and skills to navigate and access various financing mechanisms for disaster and climate resilience. This training will empower them to prioritize instruments, develop strategies, and contribute effectively to the advancement of climate and disaster resilience initiatives. Upon successful completion, participants will receive a certificate from ADPC acknowledging their commitment to enhancing their understanding of financing for disaster and climate resilience. The online phase is designed as a self-paced module for the next 2 days and supports the participants with the conceptual understanding of financing for climate and disaster resilience before the in-person phase, which will be more structured to showcasing cases, practices, and experience. Module 1, entitled Understanding the Global Frameworks, Instruments, and Mechanisms on Financing for Climate and Disaster Resilience, is expected to cover the following sessions. Session 1.1 looks at setting the stage and understand why financing for climate and disaster resilience. Now, this session will cover the conceptual understanding of why we need financing for climate and disaster resilience. This is also followed by session 1.2, which looks at the context of financing and the global frameworks. Particularly, this looks at the context of financing and the global frameworks such as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, also known as the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. This also includes the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, also referred to as the SFDRR, and of course the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and other relevant United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC processes. Session 1.3 on the Introduction to Climate Finance builds from Session 1.2. However, this dives into the fundamental components of climate finance, the different mechanisms on how climate finance is mobilized, allocated, and deployed to support climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience initiatives. To support Session 1.3, the session on the climate finance architecture will provide a case study on how a country is currently managing its public, private, and international mechanisms to allocate resources for climate action. Disaster risk finance and insurance are critical components of risk management strategies aimed at mitigating the financial impact of disasters, such as natural catastrophes and man-made crises. Session 1.5 will cover the overview of disaster risk finance and insurance. Session 1.6, Sustainable Financing, also known as Sustainable Finance, refers to the practice of integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into financial decision-making processes. The goal of sustainable financing is to promote long-term sustainable development and address various environmental and social challenges, such as climate change and disaster risk, and this is also a critical piece on financing for climate and disaster resilience. For the in-person phase, we will have 3 full days of comprehensive and intensive modules. Now, the objectives of the next couple of days is to supplement the participants with key building blocks on financing for climate and disaster resilience. Now, we hope at the end of the training course that participants are able to present their respective outlines or draft of strategies or action plans on financing climate and disaster resilience. Module 2 is focused on climate and disaster resilient investments. Now, this module is focused more on the public sector and has 3 sessions. Session 2.1 is focused on mainstreaming climate and disaster resilience in public planning processes, and Session 2.2 builds from the public planning processes and showcases cases of public finance management for climate and disasters. Now, recognizing that the public sector finance alone are not enough to finance effective climate action and disaster risk reduction, Session 2.3 on mechanisms and instruments for financing climate and disaster resilience also builds and begins to create the linkages on disaster risk finance and insurance, public-private partnerships, innovative finance, inclusion and financing climate and disaster resilience, adaptation finance, as well as practices and lessons learned on climate and disaster risk finance and insurance. Now, financing also needs to ensure that vulnerable and marginalized communities, including those who are economically disadvantaged or socially marginalized, are actively involved in decision-making processes and also have equitable access to resources, information, and support systems. This includes, but is not limited to, women, children, the elderly, indigenous populations, and peoples with disability. Now, Module 3 seeks to showcase practices in Asia on inclusive financing, as well as to provide cases on gender-smart solutions to climate and disaster risk finance and insurances. Module 4 is focused on public-private partnership for climate and disaster resilience. Public-private partnerships, also referred to as PPPs, play a crucial role in enhancing climate and disaster resilience by leveraging the strength and resources of both the public and private sectors. Public-private partnership also provides a valuable framework for mobilizing resources, expertise, and innovation to enhance climate and disaster resilience. Now, this module will showcase good practices on private sector engagement for climate and disaster resilience, and leveraging innovative financing is also crucial for addressing the challenges posed by climate change and disaster resilience effectively. Traditional funding, for example, may not always be sufficient to meet the increasing demands for climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction. Therefore, innovative financing mechanisms can help bridge the funding gap and unlock additional resources for climate resilience and disaster resilience initiatives. There is a growing need for financial support to implement adaptation measures that can safeguard communities, ecosystems, and economies for the adverse impacts of climate change. Increasing adaptation finance in Asia is pivotal for strengthening climate resilience and safeguarding the well-being of millions of people living in vulnerable areas. Module 5 will particularly take a look into mechanisms, good practices, and lessons learned on adaptation finance. This includes a session on accessing international and national adaptation finance. Now, in line with climate finance, monitoring, reporting, and verification, also known as MRV, of climate finance is a crucial process that ensures transparency, accountability, and effectiveness in the management of funds allocated for climate-related projects and activities. This also contributes to building confidence amongst donors, investors, and beneficiaries, and thereby encouraging increased investments in climate-related projects and activities. A well-designed disaster risk financing strategy integrates multiple elements to ensure adequate financial resources are available to efficiently address disaster impacts. Now, this is a dynamic and iterative process that requires collaboration, planning, and preparation to enhance resilience and reduce the financial burden of disasters on affected communities and economies. Anticipatory and forecast-based financing are promising approaches to enhance disaster risk financing, providing an opportunity to act proactively and reduce the impact of disasters on vulnerable communities. Now, these approaches contribute to building resilience and adapting to an increasingly uncertain climate. Module 6 will continue to build from previous sessions on climate and disaster risk finance and will focus on the elements of a disaster risk financing strategy and showcase anticipatory and forecast-based financing and how this is being implemented in the context of Asia. This concludes the opening session. We will be providing reading materials for you to prepare for the course. At this stage, and on behalf of the organizing team, we wish you a safe flight and we look forward to welcoming you in Bangkok.